The night before my graduate school graduation, my mother called me to ask what colour tie my brother-in-law should wear to the ceremony. Not to ask if I was nervous. Not to say she was proud. To ask about a tie. I remember standing in my apartment, still in my scrubs from a 12-hour shift at the hospital, holding the phone against my ear while my cat wound around my ankles. I told her navy would be fine. She said great, and then she told me they were thinking of stopping for brunch on the way, so they might be a little late, but they'd definitely be there. Definitely. I hung up and wrote that word in my journal. Definitely. I circled it twice. I should tell you a little about where I came from before I tell you what happened, because none of it makes sense without that part. I grew up in a 3-bedroom house in Columbus, Ohio, with my parents, my older sister, and a yellow lab named after a president nobody in our family actually liked. My sister. I'll call her that, just my sister, because she stopped being anything else to me a long time ago, was the kind of person who filled every room she walked into, not in a warm way, in the way that left no space for anyone else. My parents loved her the way some people loved the weather. Completely without question, without ever thinking it was something they chose. I was the quiet one, the one who got good grades and didn't make trouble, and was always described by relatives as so self-sufficient. Self-sufficient is what adults call a child who has learned that asking for things doesn't work. My sister got a car for her 16th birthday. A used Jeep, but still. Red, with a white stripe on the hood. I got a gas card and a handshake from my dad, which he clearly thought was funny. I was not laughing. I got my own car at 19 with money I saved from waitressing, a 2009 Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard and no working AC, and I drove that thing like it was a Mercedes, because I had earned every single mile of it. I worked through undergrad. My sister got her tuition paid in full when I got into a Master of Science in Nursing program, a competitive, fully accredited program that took me 2 application cycles to get into. My mother's response was, "Oh, that's a good backup plan." A backup plan. I was 31 years old by the time I finished. I had completed my clinical hours while working part-time at a pediatric clinic. I had written a thesis. I had passed boards. I had a job lined up at a level I trauma centre in Pittsburgh that I had fought for through 3 rounds of interviews. My graduation was on a Saturday in May. The ceremony was at 11 in the morning at the university's main arena with assigned seating for guests that I had requested 4 months in advance. I had mailed my parents their tickets in March with a handwritten note telling them how much it would mean to have them there. My sister had been planning a trip to Sedona for most of that spring. She and her husband had wanted to go for years, a wellness retreat kind of thing. Hiking, spa treatments, some kind of couples workshop that costs more than my monthly rent. It was the kind of trip that gets planned, and we scheduled and planned again, because it's never quite urgent enough to actually happen. Until it was. The date she finally booked, the only opening at the specific resort she wanted, at the specific time of year she wanted, with the specific tappage that included something called a private Red Rock sunset ceremony, which I am not making up, was the same weekend as my graduation. My mother called me on a Tuesday evening in April, 6 weeks before the ceremony, to tell me, "Your sister finally got everything worked out for Sedona," she said. "We're all going, the 3rd weekend in May." There was a pause. I waited for her to remember. I actually waited, counting the seconds, because I thought she had just momentarily forgotten and would catch herself. She didn't catch herself. "Mom," I said, "my graduation is that weekend." "I know, sweetheart, but your sister has been trying to book this for almost 2 years. I've been in school for 3. Another pause. I heard her shift in her chair. "It's not like we won't celebrate with you. We can do dinner when we get back." I want to be precise about what happened in my chest in that moment, because I've tried to describe it to people and never quite gotten it right. It wasn't anger, not first. It was more like the sensation of a door closing very quietly in a place I didn't know still had doors. Something that had been slightly open. Some small stubborn hope I hadn't even acknowledged keeping. Just clicked shut. "Okay," I said. "You're not upset. I'm fine, Mum." I wasn't fine. But I had been not fine before, and I knew how to put it somewhere and keep moving. My husband, I'll call him my husband because he is, and he is the part of this story that keeps me from describing it as only sad, was waiting for me in the kitchen when I got off the phone. He had made pasta. He had a specific look on his face, the one he gets when he already knows something went wrong and he's deciding whether to ask. I told him. He set down his fork. He didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then he said, "We're going to make that day the best day you've ever had, with or without them." That was it. No speech. No lengthy analysis of my family dynamics. Just that sentence, delivered the way he delivers most things. Quietly, completely, like he had already decided it was true. I married the right person. I want that on record. I called my parents back the next morning and told them I understood, that family trips are important, that I hoped they had a wonderful time in Sedona. I said this without crying, which I consider one of my greater achievements. My dad said, "That's our girl, always so understanding." I have thought about that sentence approximately 400 times since then. The weeks between that phone call and graduation were strange. I went through the motions, picking up my gown, arranging cap photos with my classmates, confirming the dinner reservation my husband had made at a restaurant I loved. My in-laws were coming. His parents had driven in from Michigan, booked a hotel 3 weeks early, and his mother had already asked me twice what flowers I wanted so she could bring them. His mother, who I had known for 5 years, who had no biological obligation to care about my milestone. She had asked me about flowers. I kept that contrast very quiet inside myself because taking it out and looking at it directly felt like something I wasn't ready to do. The morning of the ceremony, my husband brought me coffee in bed before I was even awake, which he does not do under normal circumstances. His mother texted me a photo of the bouquet she had put together. Yellow tulips, my favourite, at 7:15 in the morning. His father had ironed his dress shirt the night before. These people. I got dressed. I pinned my hood. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror for a long moment, and I thought about everything it had taken to get here. Every double shift. Every exam I had studied for at midnight after working a full day. Every time I had sat in the library corral and wondered if I was going to make it. Every time someone in my family had said something that made me feel like making it was beside the point. I went to my graduation. I crossed that stage at 11:43 in the morning, according to the timestamp on the photo my husband took from the 3rd row. He was standing up, which you're not supposed to do. He stood up anyway. His mother was next to him doing the same, holding the tulips, and his dad was clapping with his whole body the way older men do when they really mean it. My name was called, and I walked across, and I shook hands with the dean, and I accepted my diploma, and I smiled for the photographer, and it was good. It was genuinely good. The kind of good that exists in its own right, not in comparison to anything. But I noticed the empty seats I had reserved. I won't pretend I didn't. I had requested 4 tickets. 2 were filled. 2 were not. My parents texted from Sedona. My mother sent a string of heart emojis and, "So proud of you," at 12:02 p.m. My father sent a thumbs up, which is how my father communicates most things. My sister sent nothing, which surprised me less than it probably should have. My husband saw me look at my phone and took it gently out of my hand and put it in his jacket pocket. He said, "Not today. We went to lunch." His mother made a toast. His father cried a little, which he tried to hide, and which made me love him completely. I had salmon and a glass of champagne and a piece of lemon cake, and for a few hours I let myself just be there, in that moment, with people who had chosen to show up. It was enough. It was actually enough. They came back from Sedona on a Tuesday. My mother called to debrief the trip, the hiking, the spa, the Red Rock sunset ceremony, the incredible restaurant they had found, the photo of my sister and her husband in matching robes on a balcony. She described it the way you describe a trip to someone you know will be happy for you, without any awareness that she might need to calibrate. I listened. I said, "That sounds beautiful," in the places where it was expected. I asked about the hiking because it was easier than asking about anything else. Before we hung up, she said, "We'll do your dinner soon. Maybe next month." "Sure," I said. Sounds good. That dinner did not happen in the next month. It happened 6 weeks later at an Applebee's near their house because my dad had a coupon. My mother brought me a card that said "Congratulations, graduate," with a cartoon diploma on the front and a check for $50 inside. My sister came late and spent most of the dinner on her phone and said, "Cool, congrats," when there was a pause long enough to require it. My father told a story about a guy at his office for 20 minutes. That was my graduation dinner. I drove home afterward and sat in my car in the parking garage of my apartment building for a while. Not crying, just sitting. Doing the thing I do where I try to locate exactly what I'm feeling before I let myself feel it. What I was feeling was done. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just done in the way that a conversation is done when both people stop talking and neither one calls back. Something had run its course. I could feel the shape of it very clearly sitting in that car. The thing that changed everything happened 3 months later, and it was not something I did. It was something my sister did, and she did it without thinking it through because she rarely does. She announced she was expecting her first child. I want to be clear, I have nothing against this baby, who is innocent and have no part in any of what I'm about to describe. I actually think about that baby sometimes, and hope they grow up knowing they are loved unconditionally. By someone, by the right people. But the announcement came with something attached. My mother called me within the hour, practically vibrating through the phone, to tell me about the plans. A baby shower. An elaborate one. At the nicest event venue in their suburb, catered, with a floral installation and a custom dessert bar and a photo booth. Already being planned, already being budgeted for. My mother had never paid for a single thing at my wedding. I want to let that sit for a moment. My husband and I got married 2 years before my graduation. We had a small wedding, intentionally small, because we wanted it that way, but also because I knew better than to expect financial help from my family. My in-laws contributed generously. My parents gave us a set of dish towels and a card signed, "Love, Mum and Dad." My sister was a bridesmaid and complained about the dress for 4 months, and now my mother was describing a baby shower budget that made my wedding look like a backyard potluck. "We're thinking somewhere around $8,000, she said. "Your aunt is going to help, and we're hoping everyone can chip in a little." "Chip in," I said. "You know, to make it special for her." I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, "I'll have to see what we can do." After I hung up, I sat down at my kitchen table and I wrote a list. I know that sounds mundane, but I am a person who processes things by writing lists. I wrote down every major milestone in my life for the last 10 years. My college graduation, my wedding, getting into grad school, finishing grad school, my board certification, my first job at the trauma centre. Next to each one, I wrote what my parents had done. Or not done. Then I thought about what they were preparing to do for my sister's baby shower. I looked at that list for a long time. I didn't make a scene. I want to be very clear about that, because the story could sound like it ends with a confrontation in someone's living room, and it doesn't. I'm not that kind of person. I've tried being that kind of person, and it doesn't fit right on me. What I did was stop. I stopped being available. Not dramatically, not with an announcement. I just stopped rearranging my schedule for things that didn't rearrange for me. I stopped volunteering information about my life to people who had consistently demonstrated they would not retain it. I stopped feeling guilty about protecting my own energy. My husband had been gently suggesting this for years. He'd never pushed. He'd just occasionally say something like, "You don't owe anyone access to your peace," and let me sit with it. I started sitting with it. The first time I said no to something was Thanksgiving. My parents were hosting, same as always, and I had always gone, same as always, even when it cost me a shift swap at work and arrived home too tired to function. That year, I called my mother in October and told her we would not be there. I said we were spending the holiday with my husband's family. I said it calmly and I did not apologize. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You're being dramatic." I said, "I hope you have a wonderful holiday, Mom." And I ended the call. We have Thanksgiving in Michigan with my in-laws. We played board games and ate too much pie, and his little cousin taught me a card game I still don't fully understand. I went to bed that night and realised I hadn't had a tension headache the entire day, which was unusual enough for me to notice. My sister eventually called me, about 2 months after the baby shower planning began, to ask if I had contributed to the gift fund my mother had set up. I had not. "Mom says you've been weird lately," she said. "I've been exactly the same," I said. "I'm just not rearranging my life around things anymore." That's a little cold, don't you think? I thought about the graduation tickets I had mailed in March. I thought about the empty chairs. I thought about the Applebee's dinner and the $50 check and the father who talked about his co-worker for 20 minutes. I thought about the word definitely. "I'm not cold," I said. "I just got clear." She didn't really have a response to that. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing important, and then we hung up, and that was more or less the last real conversation I had with her for a long time. I need to tell you about the moment I stopped being angry. It was a Sunday in February, almost 9 months after my graduation. My husband and I were at a farmer's market, the small covered one that runs through winter in our neighbourhood, and I was standing in front of a table of ceramic mugs, looking at one that had a small painted bird on the handle. It cost $14. I stood there thinking, I can just buy this. I can buy this mug because I like it and I worked hard and I built a life and I have $14. Nobody's permission required. Nobody's validation required. This small, sturdy, beautiful thing is available to me because of choices I made. Every single one of them on my own. I bought the mug. I still use it every morning. It's sitting on my desk right now, actually, while I write this. I think about that moment sometimes, when people ask me how I got past what happened, or how I stopped being angry, or how I moved forward. I don't have a clean answer. I didn't have a conversation with my parents that fixed everything. I didn't send a letter enumerating their failures. I didn't post anything online or blow anything up. I just started choosing over and over again the life that was actually in front of me. The job at the trauma centre became a position I love. I have colleagues I would do anything for. I have patients who have held my hand and said things I'll carry for the rest of my life. I come home to a husband who makes pasta on hard nights and doesn't need me to be anything other than exactly who I am. My in-laws came for Christmas last year, and his mother brought a photo album she had made of our last 5 years, graduation photos, vacation snapshots, a candid from the farmer's market where I'm laughing at something I can't remember. I cried when I opened it. Not sad crying. The other kind. My mother called me in March, about a year and a half after the graduation. I had not reached out much in the intervening months, and when she called, her voice had a different quality to it. Careful. Like someone testing ice. "I've been thinking," she said, "that we maybe didn't handle some things very well." I had imagined this conversation many times. In my imagined versions, I said a lot of things. Long things. Sharp things. Things that would make her understand exactly what each choice had cost me. What I actually said was, "I know. We love you. You know that. I know you do, Mom. I think we took for granted that you'd always be okay, because you always were." I let that sit in the air between us for a moment, because it was true, and also because it was the saddest explanation I had ever heard. They had failed me, in part, because I had always survived them failing me. My own resilience had made me easy to neglect. "I need things to be different," I said. "I'm not interested in relitigating everything. I just need it to be different going forward." She said she understood. She said she wanted to try. I don't know yet if she meant it. I genuinely don't. That's not a dramatic thing to say. I mean, I actually don't have enough information to know. We've talked more in the last few months. She came to Pittsburgh for a weekend in the fall. She brought yellow tulips, which I don't think was an accident. We had dinner, we talked about small things and some medium things, and once, briefly, about something real. It was not a perfect visit. It was not a repaired relationship with a bow on top, but it was a first step, and it was the first time I had seen her try. That is something. I'm choosing to believe it is something. If you're reading this and you recognise yourself somewhere in it, in the empty chairs, in the self-sufficiency that others called easy, in the long quiet accumulation of not being chosen. I want to say something directly to you. The people who treat your milestones as inconveniences are not reliable narrators of your worth. They are telling you about their own limitations every single time. That is not a comfort that makes it hurt less. I know that, but it is the truth, and it held me up on a lot of days when I needed something solid to stand on. You don't have to blow everything up. You don't have to write a letter. You don't have to have the big conversation. If the big conversation isn't something you can afford right now, you can just buy the mug. You can just make a life that feels like yours, genuinely yours, chosen and built and filled with people who show up, and let that be the answer. The diploma is real. The work is real. The Tuesday mornings where you wake up and you know who you are and how you got there. Those are real. Nobody who wasn't in that room can take them from you. I used to believe that if I just kept being good enough, patient enough, quiet enough, understanding enough, the people who were supposed to see me would eventually see me. That's not how it works. I know that now. What I've learned, slowly and without any dramatic revelation, is that the way people treat your milestones is a full sentence. It doesn't need context. It doesn't need to be explained away or softened with history. When my parents chose a spa resort over the ceremony I'd worked 3 years toward, they weren't distracted or confused. They made a calculation, and I was on the losing side of it. The same side I had always been on. The side where the child who handles things gets handled less, because she's already fine, because she'll understand, because she always does. The cost of always being fine is that people stop checking whether you are. I spent a long time being angry at that, and then I spent longer just being sad about it. And then one day I wasn't either of those things anymore. I was just clear the way a window is clear after it rains. Not fixed, not new, just clean enough to see through. What I saw was this: I had built something real. A career. A marriage. A life with texture and warmth, and people in it who showed up on ordinary Tuesdays, not just the days worth photographing. My mother-in-law with her yellow tulips. My husband putting my phone in his jacket pocket because he knew I needed to stop checking it. His father crying at my graduation lunch and trying to hide it behind his napkin. These were not small things. I had been treating them like small things because I was too busy measuring the distance between what I had and what I'd always wished my own family would give me. That measurement was making me miss my actual life. The word I keep coming back to is integrity. Not the version of it that means following rules, the older version, the structural one. The way a building has integrity when every part of it is load-bearing and honest. I had built a life with that kind of integrity, piece by piece, on my own, without a safety net, and I'd let other people's indifference make me doubt the quality of what I'd made. I don't anymore. My sister's choices are her choices. My parents' limitations are their limitations. Neither of those things is a verdict on me. Actions accumulate into character over time. That's not punishment from outside, it's just physics. The people who showed up consistently, who made space, who remembered what mattered. Those relationships held weight. The ones built on expectation and convenience did not. That's not a moral I invented. That's just what I watched happen. I chose to stop waiting for the people who had always been late. I bought a mug at a farmer's market one February morning, and I understood, standing in the cold, that I did not need anyone's permission to take up space in my own life. The degree was real. The work was real. The person I had become in the process of earning both was real. Nobody who missed the ceremony gets to have an opinion about what it meant.